video for the more advanced players out there with some different ideas to connect different parts of the neck with different chord shapes and different chordal motion ideas and stuff like that. So that little opening improv was based off of a bluegrass song, a standard called Ragtime Annie, and I was just kind of riffing off that a little bit. So I'm going to try to take some of those ideas and kind of flesh those out. First off, this 52 Telly reissue, I've got it tuned down a half step. Because of the radius of the neck, I use heavier strings and keep the action a little higher and keep it tuned down a half step. It just makes it playable. So if you want to play along with me, either move things down a fret or tune to this E note. Get the rest of your guitar tuned up to that, or whatever you want to do. So this tune that I was playing at the beginning, I'm going to show you the chord progression real quick, and I'm just going to run through it once, because like I said, this is more aimed toward the advanced players. So the chord progression is something like 5 chord, 1 chord, that repeats, 5 chord, 1 chord, 1, 4, 5. So that's the chord progression in a nutshell. Pretty simple, really. So some of the ideas I was using there, we're going to start on the 1 chord, obviously, because that's where the chord progression starts. So there's some different things that you can do over that C 1 chord that sound kind of boppy and kind of bluegrassy all at the same time. So let's look at some of those ideas. So the first one that comes to mind is this sort of chromatic motion thing. And you can sort of do that in different registers. So the first one I played there is basically up here out of this position. So I'll play through that slowly so you can figure out these notes here. Through that A section again with some of those ideas. So let's look at some other stuff I did there. So when I was playing over the 5 chord, I did something like that. That wasn't exactly it, but it was something like that. So what that is we're playing over this G chord as a 5 chord. So we can put our dominant 7th in there. And I was kind of playing through this shape that you see a lot like in dobro licks and stuff. So that's a series of shapes that leads you from a G to a G7 kind of tonality. So let's take a look at some different ways you can do that. Now you could just play it straight like I did there. You can sort of mix it up like that, which I'm just doing like sort of the Albert Lee, you know, kind of way of playing that sort of thing. So I'm just doing these same shapes, except instead of playing the notes together, I'm playing them separately and add some slides and stuff in there. So by that same token, if we're playing down here sort of in this lower position, so I did kind of the same type of thing there, where this is just basically this, moved into a lower octave. So let's look at that, the basic idea first. So that what that is that's a walk down. From G to G7 like we did before. So it's exactly the same thing. Except instead of playing these two notes, a lot of times I'll do the open strings instead. Like that rather. And then kind of like what we did up here. Mix that up and play individual notes as opposed to the diads. So let's look at some of that B section there. So the B section, chordally, is the first time through it goes, it goes immediately to the G. Then the second time through, stays on that 4 chord a little longer. That's what that B section is doing there. So chordally, you know, if we were sort of like playing, kind of focusing on the chord tones, this will probably stink because I'll be thinking about it too much. But kind of playing triads over that basic chord progression, which is a really easy way to kind of solo. So, you know, like over the C chord, I think I was doing like a C6. And then over that 4 chord, I've just got the triad. So let's look at some ways that we can kind of mess around with that to make that sound a little hipper. So there at that time, you see that same motion over the 5 chord, except this time, instead of going down from up here, I'm starting here, and that's just sort of a different inversion of what we did the first time. So that's, you know, like the first time we had the B and the D note. This time we're starting on the G and the B and kind of using the same pattern. So that's walking us down from sort of a G to a G7 type of sound. Second part of the B section, I did something like, what did I do there? So that was going to the 4 chord, then I went to the 7th, and then back to the C, and then over the G chord, did something like that. Whenever we're playing over a C triad, we have this little box that we can always default to. Get a lot of mileage out of that, and over the G chord, you know, you probably have a ton of open G position licks already in your arsenal that you can use to connect from a 5 to a 1 chord. So there I'm just kind of going down sort of that G, our E minor blues scale, G major blues scale. Start connecting all these ideas together, it starts to kind of look like you know what you're doing. So let's kind of, I'll try to take a run through. So there's some of the same types of ideas, just kind of moved around and changed up a little bit. Another thing that we do get some mileage out of is those 6 chords and 6/9 chords and stuff like that. That has a really sweet sound. So like over the 1 chord, instead of just playing, you know, like a regular C triad, doing something like this, which is part of like the C6/9 chord. Now, if we just do those higher 3 notes, keep in mind that that C6/9 chord is basically 1 note away from an F6/9 chord. That's pretty cool. If you keep that in mind, you'll get some mileage out of that. So if we're playing from something where we go from C to F, for instance, that series of notes will work over either chord because they both have those same notes in the 6/9 chord. So let's actually just take a quick look at the 6/9 chord. So a C6/9 would look something like this. If you don't know that, all that is C, A, D, G, and C. If we change this root note from C to F, so move it from the 6th string to the 5th string, then we have an F6/9 chord. You can also play an F6/9 chord up here. some chordal ideas you can use. And if you use a little chromaticism, you know, kind of like what I was doing there, or something like. So you can kind of see, you know, over the C chord, the one chord, I was just kind of taking that 6/9 shape, walking it back a fret, and kind of making a little riff out of that. So there's some of those same ideas. Basically doing a lot of bluegrass licks here. I'm just basically playing bluegrass licks on electric guitar, and I think it sounds pretty cool. A lot of bluegrass, especially sort of that swingy bluegrass stuff, has a lot of overlap with some of the western swing stuff that you might have heard from like Bob Wills and guys like that. There's actually a lot of overlap in a lot of this stuff. So let's look at some other ideas sort of out of that vein. So if you know your chord or know your chord inversions and stuff like that, you've probably seen, you know, like the Hendrix inversion, you know, like Little Wing, that type of thing. What that is, if we're playing C, would be, you know, like your E, G, C, E notes up here in 5th position. Around on that shape. So and there would be some, you know, some like example kind of slow, so you kind of see what I'm doing there. Some more ideas. So kind of basically doing the same type of thing over that one chord, you know, kind of using this sort of, it's not really a box, well I guess it is. You know, like if we just did the basic C, I guess it would be major blues scale, it would be something like this. But I'm adding some other notes and stuff in there too. I'm not playing just the straight blues scale. You kind of see some, you know, like I'm sliding from that B into that C. That's a motif I like to use a lot. That sort of rockabilly swing lick. You probably remember the rock and roll solo by Led Zeppelin. Yeah, it's kind of like sort of that same type of thing. Just a shorter version of that. So like if we were in A, you know, we have this A shape here. Like the Johnny B. Good type of thing. But it's even more condensed than that. So what we have is we're just sliding from a minor to a major third. Then we're doing our fifth, our sixth, and our root. So in G, obviously, it would be our C. Some other things that we can do out of sort of this C swing type of tune. So we looked at a couple versions of that. There's one that I like to use a lot. This is a lick that honestly I lifted off of another YouTube guy, and God only knows where he got it, but it's really cool. So what that is like that's doing it in G. It's kind of a cool double stop lick. So what that is that's sort of what we were doing here, except up an octave. Okay, and then you go to this tritone. This is the key to it right here. That's the cool part. Okay, and then you're gonna bar on, in this case, the 17th fret, B and G strings. Okay, and then we're gonna slide from F sharp to a G, but only that dyad version, so that's 15th and 14th fret, sliding up a fret. You can end that different ways. That's just what immediately came to mind. So we talked about this chromatic thing up here, kind of opened with that. So let's look at that same thing, but now let's kind of put it down here in sorry about the sniffles, I'm getting sick. So we have in a C position, something that would look like this. Okay, and then we can take that same thing we did down here and play it up here. Watson lick. There's a Doc Watson song with I think there's a Doc Watson or Norman Blake. I might be wrong. It might be a Norman Blake lick. Hell, it might be both. Anyway, that's just all it is. Pretty sure it's Doc Watson. Yeah, I think the outro is something like that. That's close to what he played, if not exact. Also, I'm gonna say that higher up the neck version of that. I should tell you that I lifted that from David Greer. Actually, I heard him play it, I think, in the key of F, so he did it down here. I can't remember what song that was on, but I thought that was so brilliant the first time I heard it. That I learned it in all the different keys and stuff, and I've got a lot of mileage out of that. In fact, you could use that in Ragtime Annie. You could use that over the 5 chord where it's, on the G there. Something like that would lead you from your 5 back to your 1, which is just this. Kind of resolving into that C box that I told you about. That box works with about everything. And obviously, if it works for C here, it would work for D here. So, yeah, you'll get some use out of that, man. It's a simple thing. It's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 notes. But it sounds so cool, and you can mix those 5 notes up in any number of ways and come up with your own, little variations of that just on the fly, and it's really easy. And kind of like when you're playing blues and the pentatonic scale is going to work. If you're playing some kind of swingy bluegrass thing, you're almost guaranteed that something like that out of that box is going to sound pretty cool 90% of the time. So let me try to play an improv over the Ragtime Annie progression, and this time I'm just going to use those smaller boxes. So this might suck, it might be cool, I don't know. So over the C chord we're using this box, and then over the G we're going to go up here. C. So that would look like something like this. C. So I stuck to it most of the time there. Kind of went off the reservation a little bit, but you get the idea. So over the C, kind of playing out of that box, and then on the G I went up to this box. Then went back down to C. That lick we learned up here earlier. So you see how I'm kind of ideas, and the whole idea is to take these loose ideas, these licks, motifs, or whatever, and put them together in a new creative way that's sort of fresh each time you do it. But you might be repeating one thing a lot in different sort of different variations and contexts and stuff like that. But that's what keeps it fresh, because if you just memorize, like take Ragtime Annie and you memorize a break for it, you're gonna get sick, or at least I get sick of playing the same thing over and over. And then, it just gets stale, man. Yeah, you don't want to be bored while you're playing. So it's good to have sort of a improvisational set of ideas that you can access and go to sort of on the fly. And a lot of that, if you've watched this far in the video, you probably already know, but we'll talk about it anyway. A lot of that is just based off of knowing your chord inversions and different variations of chords across the neck. So like at the beginning we talked about the chord progression. It's mainly C, F, and G. Not in that order, but so let's look at that. So like the A section, we got so over that C chord, most of the time I'm sort of around some kind of C shape. Playing over the G chord in a harmony, it's the same type of thing. I'm around some kind of G shape or another. And I'm back on C there. So let me kind of demonstrate that slowly. So I'm just going to do an improv based off of these C shapes. Let's do these G shapes. Same ideas. That's another kind of cool idea when you're playing over a C chord, to go to that E flat and bend up to our third in C. Or you can do it the Doc Watson way, which is also cool, where you catch the D against the open E note. That would be like an example of sort of a swing lick based off of that. Same idea. So there again, I'm just kind of zoning in on those chord shapes and trying to do licks based off of nearby consonant notes and things of that nature. because we know, like I know instinctually, like if I'm playing off of this C shape, I've got these other notes sort of around that chord that I know are consonant with that chord. Back to the Johnny B. Good thing, like we talked about earlier, but basically what that was Chuck Berry was just taking, I think in his case he was playing a B flat. Just kind of playing around that chordal shape. Like when he's doing that, that's just notes of the chord, and then he adds that sixth. Taking that chord and figuring out what notes around that shape work with that chord. I mean, it's not rocket science, people. You just play and you listen and you figure out, oh, that note sucks. That note sounds a little better. That note sounds like a maybe. Sounds like, lounge jazz music. That doesn't work. So like for instance, we know that note works. That note works with this. This note kind of works. This note. Ooh, no, that doesn't sound good. So how about this one? Yeah, that doesn't sound bad. So learn your chord shapes, figure out what surrounding notes of that shape work with that chord. I know that sounds dorky and untheoretical, but it's a thing that works, It's worked for everybody that's done it since people have been playing instruments. So a lot of what I'm doing on that Ragtime Annie is it's sort of based off of that broader general concept of taking chord shapes and making hip things happen based off of those chord tones at the right time. So, we talked about that A section being mainly it's all 1 and 5. So over that one chord, I'm playing one chord ideas. I'm playing C ideas. When it goes to the 5 chord, I'm playing ideas that are consonant with the G chord shapes that I know. So let's look at some of those shapes. So let's start with C. So we've got, obviously most of you will probably know the cowboy C chord. We talked about the sort of Hendrixian version up here. Then we have our normal barred G chord, or C chord type of thing, rather. And then we can do different versions of that. Maybe we'll do the top 4 strings or the middle 4 strings, or just do the bottom 4 strings. Okay, so that's 3 different places on the neck we can play that C chord. Okay, and then we come up here. We come up to this higher octave, which is basically this again, but an octave higher, 12 frets higher. That's not very comfortable, so I probably wouldn't use that too much in a lead soloing context. But I might take pieces of this higher inversion of the chord, can walk into that from a fret back. We know that that pretty much always works. Back to some of the earlier ideas there. So those are some C shapes. Now let's look at some G shapes. It's kind of all over the place here. I apologize about that, but try to make it up to you, I promise. So we know obviously the basic open G chord. Some people call those cowboy chords. We know the G bar chord or block chord. Okay, so what's the next inversion that would be common there? So the first thing that comes to my mind would be this. And different inversions of that. So that's just, it's kind of like our C chord shape moved up to the 7th position. So that gives us 1, 2, 3 shapes to work with. Okay, and then we have our next inversion of G up here, which is this, more or less, but an octave higher. And we've taken that note out because that note's hard to reach, so to hell with it anyways. So let's look at some generic ideas. I'm talking really generic, based off of those chord shapes. So the first one was this. So we know stuff like that will work over the G chord, like the Lester flat lick, or notes of the G blues, major blues, which is the same thing as an E minor blues scale, starting on G. Okay, and then what was our next version of the chord? We had the block G chord. We've already looked at some stuff based off of that, like the Johnny B. Good thing. And we know that, you know, we've got these notes here, and we've got these notes here that we just talked about. So we know that we can move from this position down to open position if we're playing over that G. All that stuff connects together. Okay, and then we have the next one up here. So what notes do we have around here that kind of surround this G chord? Well, if you know your major scales, you'll know some of those notes are going to work. We know the major scale notes are going to work some of the time. So we have stuff like this. That's the same thing we did down here. Just moved up to G. I hope you're starting to see this variation on a theme of where I take these ideas, and then to get the most mileage out of them, I learn them in different keys and different parts of the neck. And what that does is that just enables me to more seamlessly connect together a stream of consciousness, series of musical ideas, without having to sit down and first, map it out or chart it out or anything like that. The more of these ideas that you have sort of at the ready, some people call it chops or whatever, the greater your vocabulary of chops, quote unquote, or musical phrases and ideas that you have pretty much pre-prepared, the easier you can kind of connect these different parts of the neck together in an improvisation. So that's basically what I've been trying to get across here in so many words. Is it's really about having these ideas, and these ideas are mostly, again, going back to this, these ideas are mostly based off of chord tones. Your home base, your home plate is always going to be the notes of the chord that you're playing over. And the way I think of improv is I don't really think of scales so much. I think of, like, in my brain, what lights up are the chord tones in a given position, because I know that those are the consonant tones with the harmony that I'm playing over, and I know that I can land on any of those, and it's not guaranteeing that it's going to sound good, but it's telling you at least that it's not going to sound as bad as it could sound, and that's pretty important. I had a book a long time ago, and I forget, maybe Van Epps or something like that, but what it was chord inversions across the neck, and the basic premise of the book was it was taking you up scales, sort of like chord scales. So I haven't practiced this for a long time, so this will probably be screwy. But let me give you a basic example of what I'm talking about. So the easiest key is C, because in C major there's no sharps or flats; it's all naturals. So let's start with C. So our first inversion, C triad, would look like this. So we have C, E, and G. So that's the 1, 3, and 5 of the scale. So the next three notes, if we moved everything up one scale tone, would be D, F, and A. So that's a D minor triad. So we have C major, D minor. If we move those notes up to the next scale tone, diatonically or across a scale, we'd end up with E minor. If we move those notes up to the next scale tone, we end up with our major 4 chord. And then moving along, we have our 5 chord. Then we have our minor 6 chord. Then we have our diminished 7th triad. And then we'd be back at our tonic. So that's doing root position, starting from a root position C. So the next example in the book would be like a first inversion C. So that would look, like this. So we have, now we're in first inversion, so we have our third as our bass note. So we have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and then C. Okay, and then the book would take you through the next set, which would be second inversion. So what's a second inversion? A second inversion is just a triad where now we have the 5th as the bass note. So before we had our root as the bass note, then we did a series of thirds as the bass note up the scale diatonically. Now we're starting on the 5th as the bass note. So that would look something like this. We have C major second inversion, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, C. So if you start practicing across scales diatonically like that, doing chord scales, I guess you could call them, then that helps you learn these different variations of chords all over the neck, and that gives you sort of like a instant recall where you don't have to sit there and think, oh, okay, so C major, what notes is that? Oh, so that's 1, 3, and 5, so it would be C, E, and G. By the time you've already done that much thinking, it's too late. By the time that you've thought that far into it, it's already on the next chord. So you don't have time to think of that. That's got to be an instant recall thing. And the way that you get there, the way that you get to that level of being able to do that is practicing stuff like these chord scales and practicing improvising on songs like Ragtime Annie, like we've been talking about here. Like basically that song is 2 chords. So we're not having to recall much. We're just having to recall the different variations of those chords. So let's look at that again. So C. So we have C. So that's the C chords or C triads on the 5th, 4th, and 3rd string. So that would be this. Then we have this one, which would be 2nd inversion, then 3rd inversion, then root position. Now if we started down here on 2nd inversion, we'd have something like this if we did our C triads. 2nd inversion, 3rd inversion, root position, 2nd inversion. So that's just C triads on the B, G, and D strings. Now let's look at C triads on the first 3 strings. This is another way you can practice your triads. So we have 3rd inversion, or 2nd inversion rather, with the 5th in the bass. Then we have root position. Then we have 1st inversion, 2nd inversion. Now a note about that, I don't sit and think, oh, I'm playing a C 1st inversion and C inversion. I think of that when I'm trying to explain it conceptually. But when I'm actually in the heat of playing a solo or something, I don't think of that. The whole neck sort of lights up as, in my brain, the neck lights up as these C shapes that I can connect together. So I know this, I know this, I know this, I know this, I know this. And those are all pretty much instant recall. I don't really have to think much about it. But I'm thinking of the chord tones just sort of universally, I guess would be the best way to put it. I'm thinking of it universally across the neck, as opposed to it's this inversion or that inversion or whatever. I'm just trying to fly by the seat of my pants and hold on and make some musical idea. And I just kind of know that, for instance, if I'm playing over C, I know that these notes work. Different C shapes that I can connect together. So anyway, that's a little bit of how I think about the guitar neck and how I think about improvising. So I know I've kind of covered a lot of things, and maybe you only grasped a small percentage of it, and that's okay. The bigger, broader concept, the more universal concept that I'm trying to get across here is that the more licks and motifs and the more chordal variations you know, the easier it'll be for you to take a simple song like Ragtime Annie and work your way around those changes and not sound like you're just sort of wanking on a pentatonic scale or something, which that's fine. You know, I like playing blues and all that type of stuff too, and I started out as a rock player. But that idea, that sort of scale idea of, oh, I'm just going to stay within the scale tones and it's going to sound good, doesn't really work when you're playing something like Ragtime Annie or like a swing song or something like that. And I've talked about this in previous videos. What works in those instances is focusing in on your chord tones as your target tones and knowing your ways around chords and inversions. Trust me, if you think of scales, it's just not going to work. You know, scales are a tool, but chords chords are the cake, man. Scales are just the icing. The chords are the cake. So that's really how you have to think of it conceptually to squeeze these ideas together and make it sound musical. It just doesn't work the way that 12-bar blues and stuff like that works. And even 12-bar blues, while we're on that, doesn't sound all that damn good when you're just sort of wanking through the scale and kind of ice skating from scale tone to scale tone. That's how we start. That's how we learn improvising. That's sort of a starting place for us to get our feet wet, but that's not where we want to end up. And the great blues players, your Freddie Kings and guys like that, they don't play like that either. Man, they don't just wank up and down the scale. They don't do that. They focus on chord tones, and they have cool licks and ideas sort of mapped out either subconsciously or consciously, where, oh, if I'm over this chord, I know this series of notes will work. I mean, and that's all the great blues players. None of them sort of wank up and down a blues scale the way a beginner would. That's just not where they ended up musically. And you know, you might assume that when you're starting out because you start messing around with the blues scale, pentatonic scale. And you say, that doesn't sound bad. It kind of half-assed sounds like I know what I'm doing. And yeah, that's true to an extent, but as those blues players progress and get better, they're doing something far more sophisticated than that. So you want to keep that in mind, and keep that in mind when you're playing over bluegrass and stuff like Ragtime Annie too. It's a little more involved than just playing scale tones. That won't get you there. Anyway, hope that helps. I'll see you guys next time. Harvey Mozzarella signing off. Please like, share, subscribe, etc., etc. Helps more people see this. And like I said before, I'm doing this for free. So just trying to help out my fellow travelers out there the way that I've been helped out. And hopefully you'll get some mileage out of this. And hopefully this rambling doesn't offend you. I'll see you next time. Bye.